where I'm from in Santa Rosa, when I was doing the books and making movies, I was a big hero, right? But as soon as I lead my tribe to get a casino, suddenly, you know, I'm a bad guy. It's the old interesting paradigm with American Indians. We're either fallen nature gods, where everybody feels sorry for us once we're defeated. Then they like to watch us weave baskets and do all that sort of thing and say, isn't it sad now that the Indian is taken from nature and all of that. But as soon as we want to fight the murdering soldiers or we want to build a casino, suddenly we're wagon burners again. So it's either one or the other for us. And what I've tried to do in my writing and my work, at least, is show that we're complicated human beings, neither fallen nature gods nor wagon burners, though sometimes we like nature and sometimes we get angry to defend our rights. I want to talk a little bit. I mean, I couldn't believe my tribe and my home. They're saying, Greg, we watched all this stuff going on up there, you know, on C-SPAN and CNN, all this stuff that's going on. And they said, you know, leave it to you to walk into something like that. And I said, trust me. This was planned, what, 8, 9 months ago you called me? I don't know. I don't think it just happens. But I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be here at this time for you and be able to say what I can. One of the things I want to talk about, and I will talk a lot about my life, and I'll talk to you about first my affair with Robert Redford, and then I'll tell you about my very current affair with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I've been trying to arm wrestle him. But we'll talk about that. In any event, the real issue here is how in a university and how in school and how in America can we keep a chorus of voices going rather than one. If the question is diversity, that means many, not just many in the audience, but all in the audience, all in the classroom speaking, not just listening. Because there's been a tradition in school, and it was a long time, it took me a long time to try to figure it out. I was not your most likely to succeed. I was in juvenile hall most of 8th and 9th grade, and I sniffed so much glue as a kid that, you know, I tell people, you know, 6 books, movies, PhD from Stanford, endowed chair. Imagine if I hadn't killed all these brain cells. My God, Einstein would look low IQ. But, you know, there's hope for everybody. There's never an end. And those kinds of experiences, regardless of what they are, if they're associated with our poverty or whatever else, ultimately we have to come and see those as our power, not something ever to be ashamed of. As a medicine woman said to me, Mabel McKay, who went to 2nd grade, but she taught me more than all the professors. She had more wisdom in her little finger than all the professors at Stanford. And she said to me, whatever happens to you in your life, you always have 2 options. One is to let those things get into your heart and be poison and make there be holes there. Holes in your heart where poison can live, where you hate and want to poison others. Or you can use it as medicine because you understand something. You can doctor. You can heal. So she said to me, and I was a young kid at the time, she says, what's it going to be? Hate is easy. Hate is the easy way out. Doctoring is much more difficult. I grew up poor in a lower class neighborhood, working class neighborhood. And I never was interested in going to school. As I said, I didn't read a book, folks, till I was in the 11th grade. And the book was a junior in high school. And at that time, I had wood shop, metal shop, basic English, basic math, and I think 2 study halls. I don't know how they gave me 2 study halls, but I guess they thought the poor guy needs to study a lot. And you know, on IQ tests, always real low. And in high school, when they said you took those tests, I don't know if they still give them to students, your aptitude test, what you're most likely to go into. I got chicken farmer. I mean, I like chickens, but maybe that was the only question I paid attention to. But the first book I read was Old Man and the Sea, and I remember feeling sorry for the fish. And, you know, that wasn't exactly the response the teacher wanted, and inauspicious beginnings for an English professor. But I went to Santa Rosa Junior College and finally got to UCLA, and I would still always sit in the back of the class quiet. And I thought, well, you know, I'm Indian. They started teaching Indian literature in the 70s, and some of us are thorough, and some of us may be old enough in this to remember when they started these things. And so I took an American Indian literature class, and it was amazing, folks. The teacher has us go to his home in Beverly Hills, and all sit around on the floor and smoke a pipe, a peace pipe, so that we get the feeling of the Indian world. Well, you know, here's a kid from South Park, and where I come from, you don't go sucking on pipes, especially if we have a menstrual taboo, which means, you know, if a woman is menstruating, you honor and respect her, you feed her, you cook for her, and you don't touch the thing she's doing that time, you feed her and do that kind of thing. Also, most pipes and things belong to medicine people or doctor people, and you don't fool with those things either. In fact, you stay away from those things because, as we say, they could hoodoo you. So here I am, 25 of us sitting around passing this pipe we're all supposed to suck on. And, you know, half the people are women between the ages of, 18 and 24, and chances are, but do I say anything? No. But the thing I really liked about that class is he told me I didn't have to write a paper because I came from an oral culture. It was great. Don't laugh. UCLA, I was worried how I was going to get through. So he said, all you have to do is get up and tell a story. So I got up there and I told this story about how Coyote, created the earth and how he was married to Frog Woman. And, this whole thing I talked about, how he wanted to always have sex with Frog Woman, but she was too busy taking care of their kids. And so one day when she was out getting water at the river, he took one son and threw him up in the sky, and he became the moon. And then he took another son and threw him up into the sky, and he became the sun. And when she came home, she says, "Where's my kids?" And he said, "I'm sick of you, woman." He says, "You don't want to do anything. You don't want to mess around with me. You're too busy with those kids. So I got rid of them." And she said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "But don't worry. You can always see them. They're up in the sky." Well, she began to cry and cry and cry. And he said, "Oh, heck with you." And she wouldn't quit crying. And he told her to go jump in a lake. And as you know, she's been there ever since. And that's why today a frog's always sitting up like that, because she's always looking up at her children. So, but I'm thinking of my Auntie Susie who told me the stories. And Susie was a wild woman. Susie, as we say, she had, 13 kids by 27 different guys, all different races. And Susie, as she said, she was wild and would tell these body stories and these body things. And of course, I'm up there in the class telling the story, and I'm seeing all these people taking notes. And I'm thinking of my Auntie Susie, and of course I'm starting to laugh, and I can see them writing nervous anxiety. But I'm thinking about my aunt, right? And as my aunts and all the people in my family say, these people, they always like to analyze us. So I saw them all out there analyzing, and but it was good. I got an A. Let them analyze. They all did a paper on my story. So anyway, things got better, folks. Anthropology class, California Indians. Oh boy, if I could do an Indian literature one and suck a pipe, I could certainly go there. Well, it turns out that professor, who happened to be Carlos Castaneda's mentor, Clement Meehan, did his dissertation on my people. And he wanted to know about Mabel McKay. And he said, "You don't have to write any papers. Wow, UCLA. No papers." He says, "But if you'll go home and ask her some questions." I said, "Oh, yeah, she'll tell me." He said, "We had a hard time with her. She wouldn't tell us the truth. You tell us anything." And so I said, "Oh, yeah, what do you want to know?" So he gave me these questions about does she use crystals when she doctors? What herbs does she use? And all this kind of stuff, And I said, "Oh, sure, no problem." So I went home Christmas vacation, and I went to see Auntie Mabel, and I said, "Auntie, I'll take you to do the laundry." And of course, right away, she should have been suspicious because I was always a kind of a worthless kid. But I say, "Auntie, let's go do the laundry." She said, "Okay." So we're going over there, and I start asking her these questions. And she's looking at me, because I was the type, where I grew up, when the old folks were doctoring and singing those songs, it was kind of weird. And, you know, when you saw an old man in the backyard holding hot coals in his hands for 2 hours as a way to see the future, and when you saw that same old man sitting on the front porch, and then you drive uptown 5 miles and he's sitting in the town square looking at you 2 minutes later, and you want to be a quote-unquote normal American, you're going, whoa, this isn't normal. You don't talk about this. Of course, I get to UCLA. They all been reading Castaneda, and they expect you to have a vision on the spot. And I thought, you crazy fools, I've been trying to get away from this all my life, and you want to get in it. Well, anyway, I went home to Mabel, and she looked at me like, what's this kid trying to do? You know, ask these questions. And we get to the laundromat. Of course, we got another cousin that we used to, well, I can't mention her name because she might see this on TV. But anyway, she was a lot of fun, and all the guys knew her daughters. And she comes up to hug Mabel, and I thought I was real cool because I was at UCLA and above it all. And I helped Mabel with the laundry, was folding and all of that. And we left, and I started asking her questions again, and she said, and then I said about this woman, I said, Mabel, why do you hug her? You know, they're just really like trash and stuff. And Mabel looked at me, the fool that I was, and says, you don't know anything. I said, well, what do you mean? She says, that woman's mother was a powerful doctor woman, and she was a beautiful woman, and she had a curse that was put on her and all her daughters. And that's why they're the way they are. And anybody that has anything to do with them gets the curse too. She says, how well did you know him? And right away, I thought, whoa, there's a big problem here. Because I was thinking that stories and ideas were something separate from me. That it was something, that it was out there. Of course, I had to go back, and I came to a realization that a couple things are really important, everybody. At home, in my tradition, stories do not have a beginning, middle, or an end. They're not separate from you, and they're not something to analyze or put in a box as they teach you in school. At home, they're connected to you. There is no beginning, middle, and end. They go on forever. And your job is to dialogue or talk about them. As Mabel said, don't ask me what it means, the story. Life will teach you about it the way it teaches you life. And as my Auntie Violet said, she said, when us Indians hear a story, we wonder about it. We think about its genealogy, where it came from. She says, and we wonder because we don't know everything. She said, white man is different. He don't want to know he don't know. And I began thinking, of course, I had to go back and tell a professor that Mabel was away for the holidays. I still got an A. But I began to really think about something that's really important, and that is that what happens to all of us, Indian, non-Indian, all of us to some degree, women, in kindergarten, in school, school becomes a kind of missionizing situation where a chasm happens. We learn in kindergarten that what goes on in the class and in books often has nothing to do with our real lives. And to succeed, we have to learn to put our home life and our real life on the back burner and adjust to the world of the classroom. Some of you are old enough in here to remember that Dick and Jane reader and Spot. Raise your hands. There she is. Okay. The only honest woman in the bunch. Only honest person. Anyway, Dick and Jane. These two little happy Anglo kids with Spot, that most, antiseptic representative of dogdom. Are dogs really like Spot? No. I mean, if they're at home where they are, they're full of fleas. They chase chickens. They chase cars. We kick them, whatever. And if Dick and Jane had come through my neighborhood, they would have been robbed and beat up so badly they would not have got out the other end. But what we do is we learn to say, okay, this is the world, and we try to adapt to that world. And we put who and what we are, in other words, our real lives, on the back burner. And those who can adapt and those who can relate, what? Get the gold star. And then get the A's because they keep on adapting and reading. They understand. Those of us who don't go other ways. And what does that begin to do for us? That's where internalized oppression really starts, right in the school. And that's where we start a pattern, open up a big hole in our lives where we let other people's ideas judge us and determine who and what we are. So you get to high school, and if you're not 90 pounds and anorexic with 2 pom-poms, you ain't in. You ain't pretty, you ain't worth anything. True? Don't just sit there. Am I crazy or am I right? It's true. Then you get to college, right? And you take a Sociology 1 class, and they tell you the definition of the nuclear family is mother, father, siblings. Well, if you come from an Indian community, a family, a Chicano family, it's auntie, grandma, uncle, everybody else is part of your family, right? But of course, even if you're Indian, if you believe that and that chasm is existing, you go ahead and do what? If you're a social worker, you'll pull that kid out of the home rather than let auntie or grandma keep that kid. That's why you've got to have diversity, where there's a dialogue, where people can raise their hands in the class and go, who wrote that definition? Who does that definition hold for? The classroom is to be a true dialogue, to be a true learning context. I don't care how antiquated the books are. The teacher has to foster an environment where the people can qualify the definitions that are in the books, so that we can truly create a diverse group, a diverse way of learning concepts and ideas. Because as long as we don't, and as long as you're afraid, you're going to be continuing a kind of colonizing process. Once again, for diversity, there must be a chorus where we can all be heard singing. All must feel empowered. And this isn't just about cultural relativity. This isn't just saying, my way is okay. The idea here is to be able to inform as well as be informed by others. A dialogue, right? So that feminist notions can inform, for instance, much of what has been traditionally called Mexican-American history or culture, where there is misogyny in some areas and things like that. The feminists can say, so you can have Sandra Cisneros, Gloria Anzaldúa come along and say, I'm still Mexican, but I'm not going to be the stereotype of the Mexican woman. I'm going to stretch that definition of what it means to be Mexican, so that we can all begin to stretch definitions of who and what we are. That's the goal. Well, you know, I talk big and think big. I was just beginning to think, but I went on to Stanford. And that's an interesting place. I took creative writing, and I began writing about Arturo, the mixed blood people and all of that, and where I grew up and my history and that sort of thing, and the stories. And the professor said, who are these people? Are there really people like this? Of course, his stereotype notion of Indians was that, of course, they're on horses and, you know, pinto horses and out in nature. And when they're real people speaking with real everyday problems. And he said to me, you know, you'll never be able to publish these stories. And, of course, I was insecure and all that. Of course, they were trying to get people to write, in those days, the early 80s, the typical New Yorker story, the minimalist story, where, you know, Virginia goes out to Martha's Vineyard one summer and has an epiphany and decides to part her hair on the other side of her head. You know, I mean, I don't know from people like that, or, you know, I mean, maybe they're out there, but they ain't my world. I mean, that's nice, but, you know, that's another test I would have flunked. But in any event, I did what most failed or scared or intimidated writers do. I became a professor because I didn't want to dig ditches and do what I'd been doing before to live while I was trying to be a writer. And then once I got a job and relaxed, I picked up those stories again. I picked up my voice. And to show you there's a God that says, pick up your voice, get rid of that chasm, and that your voice and your experience is always your power, I got a lucrative 2-book deal from a publisher who rejected that professor's last novel. That was good. And then a guy named Robert Redford wanted to make a movie. And that was interesting. That was New Battles. The same old thing happened. It was amazing. First of all, we had a problem with Cher, but I'll tell you that in a minute. She wanted, of course, the lead in the movie. And I could just picture her, you know, in the scene driving the old car down from the res singing Half-Breed. I don't think so. Anyway, we had problems right off the bat. Because, you know, in my script, the Indians, we were brown and round. And, we never say our women are fat. They're not fat. They're powerful. And don't forget it. we, the producer, one of Redford's producers, kept saying, in Hollywood, you never know it by the movies you go to see, but everything's supposedly motivation. What are these characters about? Motivation. They like to be intellectuals, while they're in the office meetings. She said, I don't understand the lead in this here. I don't understand the lead. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, she's got this one daughter who she's fighting with, and the daughter's promiscuous and drinking. And I said, well, yeah, so what? And she goes, well, why doesn't she take her to counseling? Interesting concept. Woman's trying to figure out how she can get money to get a hamburger at McDonald's for dinner, but you wanted to take her to counseling. Of course, those people in Brentwood, they don't even know how to go shopping unless they talk to their counselors first. So I thought, well, how am I going to explain to this woman what this is, what this is? And I said to her, if a spaceship landed outside the window and it said Mars in 5 minutes for free, would you get on it? And she said, well, no. And I said, well, why not? She said, well, I don't know anything about it. I haven't read up, or I'm not familiar with it. And I said, yeah, that's about how familiar we are with counseling. So she goes, oh. Well, then, of course, their big battle was on because they wanted Cher. They wanted an actor. And I wanted these to be real people. And Cher may be a little brown, but she sure as hell ain't round. And what I did is I resorted to what I've always did as a kid, which was gang warfare. So I took Redford up to the res to meet my aunties. Of course, that was amazing. I had to call my auntie, and I said, Auntie, Robert Redford wants to come up. I need you to talk to him about, this movie thing. And she said, when? And I said, well, he's only going to be in Northern California in about 2 days. And the phone dropped. And 30 seconds of silence, and she picked it up, and she said, She said, I can't do that. I said, Auntie, why not? She says, how the hell am I going to lose 100 pounds in 2 days? But of course, leave it to my aunts. They'll rise to the occasion. Of course, we get Redford, and of course, I love taking people up to the reservation. I have 2 cousins here. It's amazing. Heidi and Brett are here. I was worried. I'm moving back to Sonoma County, and I was a little worried because I got 2,000 cousins there, and I always thought the farther I go, the farther I'll get away from, but they're following me. But anyway, we get up to the res. I love taking people up to the res. I mean, Brett or Heidi, have you been up to Kashaya, the road up there? Okay, well, non-Indians just really love it because you go up through this skinny little road, Of course, it's a reservation road, and it's got holes, like as Louise Erdrich says, there's holes on government roads. They're like government promises. We're bouncing along, and it's really beautiful. You'll have to come and see my home. It's beautiful, big redwoods and all that. And, you see non-Indians, they get all excited. They think any minute Bambi's going to jump out, India's going to, shoot a arrow and all that. And, Redford's looking all around. Of course, you come into the res, and you start seeing all the old cars, and they all go, what's that? And I said, we're almost home. We get there, and lo and behold, we're not in teepees or redwood houses or whatever they think. We're all in trailers now. And so we get into my aunt's, and of course, now I have to tell you, the lead in the script originally had what we call the traditional California Indian woman's costume, which is rubber thongs, muumuu, and pink and purple foam curlers that they'll sometimes wear 2 weeks till a party happens. And so the woman was in there, the sort of stereotype in the film. Oh, and she also wore, this particular woman, who I knew, used to wear sunglasses with a missing lens. And I guess she thought one eye protected against the sun is better than none. But I don't know. Anyway, we walk into my auntie's trailer, and lo and behold, folks, I should have known, there are 3 powerful women in muumuus, rubber thongs, and sunglasses with a missing lens. And of course, I couldn't say to Redford, beware. And I couldn't say to my aunts, don't you dare. And, well, it was interesting. He's looking at him. You can see whenever anybody comes, they're looking at this one. He's looking at this one eye coming out. And thinking maybe there was something about Pomo spirituality I hadn't heard. And the producers are all there, and the producers are all looking, and the producers are looking. And there was this big, this producer that was with us who I really wanted to get the picture in his head. And he's looking and looking and looking and trying to figure this out. And finally, the aunts introduce themselves, and this producer gets to my last aunt, Auntie Anita, who's really powerful. And he turns around, and he's looking at all the food. And that's the interesting thing. You know, when we have guests, we really put out the food. There's pies and tamales and Bambi and everything else is out there, you know. Casseroles, all kinds of stuff we do. And he's looking at all, it may be on paper plates. Have you ever gone to rich people's houses for dinner? The best china, but they give you a piece of asparagus. And you know, that's why they're skinny. They pay for the plates and not the food. But anyway, so we're there, and he's looking, this producer's looking at all the food stacked up, and my Auntie Anita kicked him in the butt. Well, it's probably a long time since a Hollywood producer's been kicked in the butt by a powerful Indian woman. And she said, "Sir, I want to ask you something." And she says, "Do you think we're all dressed up like this for nothing?" And you could see him thinking. What did Greg tell me about Pomo and Miwok spirituality? And then he goes to her, "No, but I'd really be honored if you'd tell me." This is his eye coming out. And she says to him, "God damn it, which one of us gets the part?" They were auditioning. Of course, then they sit down, and my aunt, you know, Indian women can be very forward, and my aunt says, "Just sit here for a while, I want to look at you." And while she's eating her pie, she says to this poor producer, "You know, I was just thinking I'd like to take you down to the river and lather you up." Of course, everybody wants to go for a walk on the reservation. I don't know why. What's there to see on a rereservation? It's a ghetto in the woods. There's dogs, you know, people shoot one another, whatever. You know, they always want to go for a walk. I mean, I don't know why. But anyway, my aunt said to the guys, all the people there, "I don't think that's a very good idea," she says. "Us Indian women up here, we don't get to town much, and we kind of sit in the bush and wait for strange men." They were so frightened when we left. When we left, they wanted to escort it to the car. They thought these powerful women are going to come out of the bushes and just get them. Needless to say, as my auntie said to them, "Take a good look at us. We ain't Cher." And we ended up not getting Cher. But you know, they also said that, well, Cher got me in the end in a way. But she had a fit and all this sort of thing. And they all told me that, you know, Indian movies won't sell, they won't work, and all that sort of thing. And they said, nobody but you and your mother are going to watch this. And when Grand Avenue aired on HBO in June 2006, it was the most highly rated miniseries of the season. And only one miniseries in that year beat us, and of course it had to be Cher, If These Walls Could Talk. But oh well, it was a milestone for Indian people. It showed urban Indians, it showed California Indians, and it showed women at the center of our culture. And again, one of the important things to realize is that women are, in many of our cultures, they're the center whether we like to admit it or not. As my auntie said at Stanford once, a professor said, "Is it true that the Indian women of old used to follow behind the men?" She says, "Yeah, we still do." He said, "Oh, that's terrible." She says, "No, we say go right, go left, go straight ahead." I think there's somebody in here, some folks know what I'm talking about. Again, in the media, in whatever we do, politics or whatever, the important thing is to be able to dialogue, to be able to have the voice. Times are tough. And the American Indian will always be the prick in the American conscience. Because Americans can say, "Oh, we fixed slavery," never mind the legacy of slavery and all of that. They can say the migrants came here, never mind how migrants are exploited. But how are they going to reconcile with their sense of entitlement the fact that the land you're on may not rightfully be yours. That one they don't want to touch. Okay? Again, if we're fallen nature gods, okay. In Santa Rosa, the last couple years, well, my tribe, we were working on getting a casino. And we're in rich and liberal Sonoma and Marin County. These liberals are amazing. They're all for Indians, but not in their backyard. And they say, we don't care. We just don't want you destroying our living environment. I said, oh, that's a strange concept to us. But I say, no, I understand. I understand you. You know, we want to develop 40 acres and you put concrete on 60,000 of ours, but, you know, we're going to ruin your environment. So, again, it's been an interesting journey, folks, to live in a community where there's bumper stickers that say, not here, Tonto, about the casino. Oh, yeah, death threats and everything else. And I'm glad this is on television because I want you to hear this. There's a Human Rights Commission up there in liberal Sonoma County with a Human Rights Commissioner who worked very closely with the county supervisors, most of whom do not want the casino. I had death threats against me, the same kind of stuff that Ward is going through here. I had the tribe, we had death threats coming in to the tribal office saying the only good Indian is a dead Indian. So I called the Human Rights Commission. I thought, oh, these people should help us. I called them twice, 3 times, no response. It just so happened that one of the commissioners happened to call me 2 months later to see if I would be willing to speak at some event. Well, dumb me, I'm thinking, oh, they're finally getting back to me. So I tell him that I'd called, and luckily, and his name's Steve Carroll, and he went forward. They did an investigation. We did a 52-page report of human rights violations, and they determined that since they weren't acts of violence, they were just political. Now, how do you separate race in this case from politics? Was the assassination of Martin Luther King just political? No, you can't do that. But what we also found out is that that commissioner worked in every way, the head of it, not Steve Carroll, not the guy who was on the commission, but the woman in charge of the commissions in Sonoma County was working presumably with the county supervisors, I'm not sure, but she did everything in her power to suppress us ever getting our day in the light and in the news. Her assistant came running out to one of our tribal council members in tears one night and says, I can't take it anymore. She has lied to the press. She has covered up. She originally told me to ignore Greg Sarris' phone calls. She has seated sympathetic commission members with their backs to the audience when your issue has come up. Why? It was amazing. I mean, it was amazing because they're up there talking about other groups and the stuff going on. But again, Indians, it's political because we want a casino. So if we get killed and murdered, it's political? Yeah, it's political, but it's also racial. And here we have instituted a revenue sharing unprecedented with the community. We've already given well over nearly $2 million to the schools. We're doing all this stuff in the community. But you know what it's also about? And that's what's going on in this university too today. It's money and power. Money and power. They're very concerned in Sonoma County, I think, and yes, it's conjecture, I think, but I believe, that they're very concerned about Indians suddenly having power, because money is power. And if we're going to be in a position where we're the largest employer in Sonoma County, and by the way, I got a great deal. We are going to build and run the casino union. We're going to build it green. And we are going to employ all kinds of people, low-income people in the area. They don't mind Walmart going in there, which is non-union, which does nothing, all part-time jobs. But we come in and want to do something with equity, and all of a sudden, they're all in a stir. But also, we'll have revenue to call the shots. And you hear this on television, to call the shots. And that's what makes people crazy. when we are empowered discussants in any powerful place. That's where it comes down to, money and power. And I suspect here, although I haven't done my research enough of it, but I suspect here a lot of the reaction that Ward is getting is that the university may be worried about its donors. Right? They got to please them. They need money. And I'll tell you, money, 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 money. That's what it's all about, and I've learned the hard way. So I go to Arnold. Now my affair with Arnold. Arnold's an interesting guy. But I think he'll take money. Remember, he wants to balance the state budget. You know, California is in a budget crisis. But see, Arnold's very smart. And again, this is what I'm thinking, is that 3 years from now, it's going to give Orrin Hatch enough time to do what? Amend the Constitution so a foreign-born student, was he a student? Will be able to run for president. A foreign-born person can run for president. He'll balance the state budget, even if he takes the money from the Indian casinos. He'll balance the state budget, and he'll be the star when, after Bush has destroyed the economy, he'll go in there and he'll be the rising star, and the Republicans will be able to have him. That's the notion that I think some people are thinking. But in any event, Arnold was even interesting because when he was running for his campaign, he was saying, he hadn't even done his research. He said, I'm going to tax those Indians 25%. You can't tax us. We're sovereign nations. Do your research, buddy. Tax France or Canada or something, you know. The other thing, you know, 25%, even if we agree to it, the 25%, it has to get approved at the federal level because our relationship is with the feds at the federal level. But anyway, I think he's going to, where I've been working with him, and he's trying to do a tightrope walk where he wants our money, but he wants to be popular with the voters. And there's a huge voter revolt so quickly, so fast against Indians. And they point to 2 of the 103 tribes that are making a lot of money. The rest of us, most of us in California, are still poor. The statistics hold. Life expectancy for a California Indian male is 47 years. I should be dead. A low percentage, 10%, are graduating from high school. Health, the diabetes, and all those things that plague our communities continue to exist. But again, if we become empowered and have money that can take care of ourselves and help other people at the same time, what's wrong with that? Yeah, you know, I'm against, I don't gamble, I don't even drink. But, you know, all those wineries up there, they're taking winery tours and they're drunk on those roads and all of that and, you know, can hurt people. You might lose your money in the casino and go home and shoot yourself, but you're not going to drive off the road and kill another family. If you're drinking, okay, but somehow the wineries are okay, but a casino's not. Interesting. Again, power, money, who's in control? The thing, and I'll answer any questions, the thing that I want to leave you with today is to work every way in your classes and in your life to bridge that chasm so that you can be simultaneously many things. You can be a writer, a tribal leader, a politician, and always a person fighting for wholeness and integrity in your life and the lives of others. Because if you don't fight it in yourself, you ain't going to be able to do it anywhere else. And that's where it's about. It's about all of us coming together and doing that. And in the midst of your difficult battles here today, try to move towards that direction. Try as much as possible to bridge that chasm and not getting caught in other people's games, other things that may happen here. The objective here is to save and create a world for our children. You know, I get tired a lot, but I think I get to stand up here and speak today because my grandmother, my great-grandmother, my ancestors were raped and tortured. You know a little bit about the history of California? First piece of legislation that was enacted in the state of California was the Act for the Government and Protection of Indians, which legalized Indian slavery. We became the rightful property of whosever land we were on. That was not repealed until 1868, 3 years after the Civil War. We were bought and sold. We didn't get a reservation. Then they started giving reservations to the so-called homeless Indians. and in the early teens and 20s of the last century. And what our ancestors went through so that you and I, every one of us, Indian, not Indian alike, can sit here. Silence that has enabled us to be here puts the onus on our shoulders to do something. Change the world. Don't take this life and this moment and this opportunity for granted. It cost a lot. It cost a lot. And with that, I want to say thank you, and thank you for being here, and thank you for caring. Thank you.